If you grew up as the difficult one, you didn't need anyone to tell you. You felt it every time you walked into a room and the atmosphere changed. Every time you were the first one blamed when something went wrong. Every time a normal reaction from you was treated like a character defect, while the same behaviour from someone else was brushed off as a bad day. Maybe you were the child who cried when things were unfair. The one who asked, "Why does Dad talk to us like that?" The one who pushed back when a parent crossed a line. Maybe you were even told that you were the reason your parent was stressed, sick or miserable. As if a child could single-handedly cause an adult's health or life falling apart. Somewhere along the way, you might have even wondered if you were actually the abusive one, because you were the only person calling anything out. Everyone else seemed strangely united on one point. You were the problem. And somehow, instead of people looking at the behaviour you were reacting to, the whole focus shifted onto you. You're too sensitive. You always start drama. Why can't you just let things go like your brother does? If this already feels uncomfortably accurate, you're exactly who I'm talking to. Under all of that, there's one question that never really goes away. Were you actually the difficult one? Or were you the one the family nominated to carry the label so nobody had to look at the system? Today, we're going to walk through 10 specific signs that point to scapegoating. Not vague maybe traits, concrete patterns you can map onto your own life and decide them for yourself. In a healthy family, problems are shared. People look at their own behaviour, repair when they're wrong, and adjust the system together. To understand why that didn't happen for you, you have to zoom out from you as the difficult one and look at the whole system you grew up in. In a dysfunctional family, the system often works the opposite way. Instead of looking at the real source of the tension, they pick one person to absorb it. That person becomes the scapegoat. The scapegoat isn't chosen because they're the worst behaved. They're chosen because their reactions, their sensitivity, their refusal to play along make them the easiest one to blame. Once that role's set, the rules shift. If your sibling snaps at a parent, it's teenage attitude. If you do it, it's proof that you're ungrateful. If another child shuts down or avoids conflict, they're easy. If you point out the same issue directly, you're attacking the family. Maybe you've seen it in real time. You described something your father did, and within minutes, the conversation's turned into an analysis of your tone. Over time, everyone starts to see you through that lens. Parents, siblings, sometimes even extended family. You become the problem story that keeps the "we're a good family" story protected. So how do you actually know if this is what happened to you? Let's get specific. Scapegoating rarely comes out with a formal announcement. No one sits you down and says, "Congratulations, you're now the family problem." It shows up in tiny rules that you often only recognise in hindsight. Who's allowed to be angry without consequences? Who has to apologise first, no matter what happened? Whose version of events is taken as default, and whose version is picked apart for tone? The system trains you to expect that if there's conflict, eyes will swing towards you. That if someone else loses control, the conversation will end with an analysis of your behaviour. If you've ever watched someone hurt you and somehow ended up defending their feelings, you've already seen this mechanism in action. For many scapegoats, this doesn't stop at the front door. Parents bring their version of you to extended family, community, sometimes even to therapists or priests, long before you ever speak for yourself. By the time you try to tell your side, other people already think of you as dramatic, unstable, or the one who's always had issues. Because this is so normalised, many people reach adulthood still thinking, "I must just be hard work." So instead of questioning the setup, they double down on fixing themselves. Rather than sitting with that vague, "maybe I'm just difficult" story, let's test it properly. Here are 10 specific signs that point to scapegoating instead. The rules only really applied to you. When one child broke a rule, it was kids being kids. When you did the same thing, it was a moral failing. Your siblings could roll their eyes, slam a door, speak back. You did any of that, and it turned into a full character assassination. You weren't just wrong, you were ungrateful, selfish, impossible. If the family had one set of rules on paper, and a harsher set that only seemed to land on you, That's not a personality issue. That's a role. Your feelings were framed as overreactions. You reacted to yelling, threats, silent treatment, or cruel comments the way any human would. You cried, went quiet, got angry, tried to set a limit. The response wasn't what happened there. It was, you're too sensitive. You always make a big deal out of nothing. Other people's reactions were treated as understandable. Yours were treated as evidence that you were unstable. Conflict magically became your fault. You could walk into a room halfway through a brewing argument and somehow walk out carrying the blame. Maybe your parents snapped at you. You finally snapped back, and the whole thing became a story about your disrespect. Maybe two siblings fought, but you were the one told to apologise because you should know better. Whenever something went wrong, the story ended in the same place. If you were there, it was your fault. Your story was rewritten and pre-sold to others. By the time you met extended family, teachers, church leaders, or family friends, they already had a vision of you in their heads. You were the dramatic one, the difficult teenager, the child who's always had issues. You walked into rooms where people were polite on the surface, but treated you like a problem they'd been warned about. You weren't meeting them fresh. You were already defending yourself against a story you didn't write. Protecting the family image mattered more than your reality. If you tried to talk about what was happening at home, the response wasn't curiosity, it was panic. You were told not to air dirty laundry. You were warned you'd make your mother look bad. You were reminded how much your parent did for you and asked how you could be so ungrateful. The priority wasn't the impact on you. It was how the family looked to other people. If you're recognising yourself in a lot of this and you want something a bit more structured than a video, I've put together a free guide called the 10 Scapegoat Rules that prove you were never the problem. It walks you through the core rules most scapegoats grew up under, how those rules rewired your reality and your nervous system, and some simple prompts to map where they're still running your life now. Grab it free via the link in the description box below. You were the emotional dumping ground. When a parent was stressed, angry, or disappointed with life, that energy landed on you. You were the one they yelled at after a bad day at work, the one they unloaded their marriage problems on, the one they blamed for their health, their stress, their unhappiness. You ended up carrying adult emotions you had no power to change. You were punished for naming what others ignored. When you pointed out that a parent was drinking too much, screaming at people, sulking for days or crossing lines, you weren't thanked for your honesty. You were accused of attacking the family. You were told you were being disrespectful, dramatic, or cruel. Other people saw the same behaviour and said nothing. You were the only one punished for telling the truth. If the problem was your honesty, not the behaviour you were describing, that's classic scapegoat territory. You were left out of image management moments. When it came to public photos, family stories, social events, you were either managed tightly or left out. If you showed up, there were unspoken rules about what you were allowed to say. You knew that if you broke script, you'd pay for it later. If you stayed home, the story became that you were moody or antisocial. You weren't treated as part of the family image. You were treated as a risk to it. Boundaries were called abandoning the family. Any attempt to set limits, move out earlier, spend less time at gatherings, or say no to certain conversations were treated as betrayal. You were told you were tearing the family apart, breaking your mother's heart. Other people could take space, and it was seen as normal adult life. You took space and were accused of abandoning them. If you pulled away to protect yourself, that doesn't erase what happened. It shows how the system will move the problem label around to protect itself. If you've already gone low or no contact and still feel like a monster for doing it, that's not proof you did the wrong thing. It's proof of how deeply the "you're abandoning us" script was planted. Even now, you're expected to fold first. Years later, you're still the one expected to apologise first, reach out first, smooth things over. If you don't, you're labelled unforgiving or holding on to the past, even by people who watched what happened. You're told to be the bigger person, as if your role in life is to absorb the cost so everyone else can stay comfortable. If several of these signs are landing for you, it's unlikely that you were simply born difficult. It's far more likely that you were placed in a role the system needed someone to fill. When scapegoats finally leave, most families don't fall apart. They either plug someone else into the role or carry on looking successful and respectable from the outside. That doesn't mean you imagined what happened. It means the system would rather replace you than look at itself. If these signs are lining up, the next part matters, because the role doesn't end when you move out. It follows you into how you work, love, and apologise. Growing up as the designated problem doesn't stay confined to childhood. You learn to audit every word you say before you say it. You replay conversations long after they're over, trying to work how you might have caused someone's reaction. You enter new relationships half expecting that sooner or later, people will see you as too much. You might over-own things that aren't yours. If there's conflict at work, you assume you've done something wrong. You apologise first, even when you were the one they hurt. You can also end up chasing approval from people who treat basic respect like a prize. If there's one person you feel you've been auditioning for your whole life, notice it. It's not just a crush on approval. That's the old role running your choices. Because if you could just finally convince your family that you're good, maybe that would rewrite the whole story. For many people, the first real crack in the old story comes when someone outside the system names it. A therapist who quietly says, "No, that was abuse." A partner who looks at you and says, "You weren't the problem." An article or a video that describes your childhood in detail when no one in your life has ever believed you. That moment can feel like relief and grief at the same time. Relief that you're not secretly a monster. Grief for how long you carried a sentence that never belonged to you. None of this means you're defective. It means you adapted to a set of rules that were wired against you. So what do you do with this now? First, you stop treating the word difficult as a diagnosis. Ask a different question. Difficult for who? Difficult to what? Were you difficult to control? Difficult to guilt? Difficult to sell a fake story to? A child who refuses to lie? Who reacts when they hear? Who goes quiet instead of playing along isn't difficult by nature. They're difficult to control in a system that depends on silence. Those aren't character defects. Those are signs of health in a sick system. Second, you start noticing where you still play the old role by habit. Where you over-explain. Where you say yes to avoid being seen as selfish. Where you soften your language so other people won't feel confronted by your reality. If you've put some distance between your family and still feel a wave of guilt every time you hold your boundary, name that as residue of the old role, not proof that you're cruel. You don't have to blow up your life tomorrow. You can start in the smallest, safest places. One friend who's actually earned the right to hear your story. One moment where you back your own memory over the family script. Most importantly, you let the evidence change the story. 10 signs lining up isn't proof that you're flawed. It's proof that the system you were in needed someone to carry its discomfort, and you were nominated. You were never born as the family problem. You were the one who felt what was wrong and refused to ignore it. So the system called you difficult, so it didn't have to change. If this hits a nerve and you're curious why your family needed someone in that spot, I've got another video that walks through that and what changes when you stop carrying it for them. You might want to watch that one next. And if you want something you can work through in your own time, I've also left a free 10 scapegoat rules guide linked in the description box below for you.